The organ pipes of St. Augustine Cathedral had been singing for nearly an hour. 263 guests sat in polished mahogany pews, their silk dresses and tailored suits reflecting old Charleston money in every stitch. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors that had witnessed 4 generations of society weddings. And then a voice cut through the sacred air like a blade through water. "Stop this wedding." Every head turned. The organist's fingers froze mid-chord. The priest clutched his Bible like a shield. At the back of the cathedral, a man stood in the center aisle. Tall. Dark suit that cost more than most people's cars. Eyes locked on the altar with the intensity of someone who had been waiting years for this exact moment. Marcus Cole. The groom, Victor Ashford, went completely white. His hand, which had been reaching for his bride's fingers, dropped to his side. His mouth opened, but no sound emerged. "What did you just say?" The priest's voice trembled. Marcus walked forward. Slow. Deliberate. Each footstep echoing against stone walls that had never heard anything like this. "I said stop this wedding." He never looked at the priest. Never acknowledged the gasping crowd. His gaze remained fixed on the woman in white standing frozen at the altar. "Celeste. Look at me." She did. And in that moment, 7 years of silence shattered like cathedral glass. "You can't do this," Victor finally managed, his voice cracking. "Security. Someone call security. This man is trespassing." "Try it." Marcus stopped 10 feet from the altar. "I own this building's restoration fund. I own the company that employs half the people in these pews. And I own the truth about who you really are, Victor." Victor's face shifted from white to gray. "Celeste." Marcus's voice softened, but it carried through the sanctuary like a prayer. "You don't have to do this. You never had to do this. How dare you?" Victor stepped in front of his bride, blocking her from Marcus's view. "She chose me. She said yes to me. We are getting married today, and you." "She said yes because she didn't know she had another choice." Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. "And because you made sure she believed I was never coming back." Celeste's voice emerged for the first time. Small. Shaking. "Marcus, what are you talking about?" "The letters, Celeste. The ones I sent every month for 3 years. The ones your mother intercepted. The ones Victor knew about and never told you." He held up the envelope. "I have the proof. All of it." The cathedral erupted. Eleanor Monroe, mother of the bride, rose from her front row seat with a gasp that could have shattered wine glasses. Victor's groomsmen exchanged panicked glances. The society photographer lowered her camera, sensing that no publication would ever print these images. But Celeste heard none of it. She was staring at the envelope in Marcus's hand. At the handwriting visible through the paper. Handwriting she would have recognized anywhere. Handwriting she had dreamed about for 7 years. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You never wrote. You disappeared. You left me." "I never left you." Marcus's voice broke on the last word. "You were taken from me. And I have spent every day since trying to find my way back." Victor grabbed Celeste's arm. Hard. "Don't listen to him. He's lying. He's always been a liar. This is exactly the kind of stunt a man like him would pull to. Let go of her." The temperature in Marcus's voice dropped 40 degrees. He took another step forward, and something in his posture made Victor's grip loosen involuntarily. Celeste. Marcus extended his hand. Come with me. Right now. And I will explain everything. Every letter. Every year. Every single day I spent trying to become someone worthy of finding you again. This is insane, Victor hissed. Celeste, think about what you're doing. Think about your family. Your reputation. Everything we've built. What have we built, Victor? Celeste's voice grew stronger. What have we actually built? A life. A future. Everything your parents wanted for you. Everything my parents wanted. She repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitterness. Not everything I wanted. Celeste. Did you know about the letters? Victor's silence was its own answer. Celeste pulled her arm free. The cathedral held its breath. Cancel the wedding. She looked at the priest, then at her horrified mother, then at the 263 guests who would talk about this moment for decades. I am going with him. Marcus took her hand. And they walked. Down the aisle they were supposed to walk together in the opposite direction. Past the gasping guests. Past her weeping mother. Past Victor Ashford, whose face had gone from white to gray to something that looked almost purple with rage. The cathedral doors opened, and June sunlight flooded the stone chamber. Behind them, chaos erupted. But Celeste heard only the sound of her own heartbeat. And the voice of the man beside her, saying words she had waited 7 years to hear. I've got you. I've finally got you. If you're already hooked on this story, take a second to hit that subscribe button for Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The Bentley was already waiting at the curb. Black. Vintage. The kind of car that whispered money instead of screaming it. Marcus opened the door for Celeste, and she slid onto leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Her wedding dress pooled around her like a silk ocean. Her veil caught on the door handle, and she yanked it off without ceremony, tossing it onto the floor. Marcus climbed in beside her. Drive, he told the man behind the wheel. Now. The car pulled away from St. Augustine Cathedral just as the first wedding guests spilled onto the steps, their shocked faces growing smaller in the rearview mirror. For a full minute, neither of them spoke. Celeste stared straight ahead, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. Her hands trembled in her lap. The enormity of what she had just done pressed against her like a physical weight. Celeste. Marcus's voice was careful. Gentle. Are you okay? No. The word came out strangled. No, I am absolutely not okay. I just walked out of my own wedding. In front of everyone I know. My mother is probably having a heart attack. Victor is probably calling every lawyer in Charleston. And I don't even know, her voice cracked. I don't even know if what you said in there was true. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope. He placed it in her lap without a word. Celeste stared at it for a long moment. The paper was yellowed. The edges worn. Her name was written across the front in handwriting she had traced in her memories 1,000 times. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside were pages. Dozens of pages. Letters written in that same familiar hand, dated across 3 years. September 15th, she read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Celeste, I know you probably hate me. I know I left in the worst possible way. But I need you to understand why. I need you to know that walking away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done a lot of hard things. She looked up at Marcus. His jaw was tight. His eyes fixed on some distant point through the windshield. There are 37 letters in that envelope, he said quietly. I wrote one every month for 3 years. Every single one was returned unopened. I thought you were sending them back. I thought you wanted nothing to do with me. I never received any of them. Celeste's voice broke. Not one. I know that now. His hands clenched in his lap. 2 months ago, I found out the truth. Your mother intercepted every letter. She burned most of them, but her housekeeper saved a few. The ones you're holding. Celeste pressed her palm against the letters, feeling their weight. 3 years of words she never read. 3 years of explanations she never heard. 3 years of a man trying to reach her while she believed he had abandoned her without a word. Why would she do that? The question emerged as a whisper. Why would my own mother? Because I was nobody, Celeste. I was a broke architect with student loans and a dream. I wasn't good enough for Eleanor Monroe's daughter. Marcus finally looked at her. I wasn't Victor Ashford. The name hung between them like poison. Victor knew, Celeste realized slowly. That's what you said in the church. Victor knew about the letters. He found out 3 years ago. Right around the time he started pursuing you. Marcus's voice hardened. He knew I was still trying to reach you. He knew your mother was blocking my letters. And he used that knowledge to position himself as the perfect alternative. The safe choice. The approved choice. Celeste felt sick. How do you know all of this? Because I hired investigators. Because I spent the last 2 months piecing together every lie that separated us. He paused. And because Victor told me himself. What? 6 weeks ago. He came to my office in New York. Walked in like he owned the place and told me to stay away from you. Said you were his now, and there was nothing I could do about it. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was wrong. The car turned onto a tree-lined road, the cityscape giving way to ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss. Celeste barely registered the change in scenery. Her mind was spinning through 7 years of memories, re-examining every assumption she had made. She had believed Marcus abandoned her. She had believed he chose his ambition over their love. She had believed she wasn't enough to make him stay. And none of it was true. I need you to tell me everything, she said finally. From the beginning. I need to understand what really happened 7 years ago. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The Bentley hummed along the empty road, carrying them further from the wreckage of her wedding and closer to something neither of them could name. Are you sure? He asked. Some of it is going to hurt. I just walked out on my own wedding for you. I think I can handle some pain. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Fair enough. He took a breath. 7 years ago, I was 27 years old. I was working 80-hour weeks at a firm that paid me barely enough to cover rent. I had a portfolio full of designs no one would build and a chip on my shoulder the size of Texas. He glanced at her. And then I met you. Celeste remembered. She remembered the hospital gala where they first crossed paths. She was a nursing student working the event for extra credit. He was there as a +1 for a colleague, looking uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. They had spent the entire night talking. You were the first person who looked at my sketches and saw something worth building, Marcus continued. Everyone else saw pipe dreams. You saw possibility. You saw me. I saw a man who was going to change the world, Celeste said softly. I wasn't wrong. No. But I was too proud to let you help me get there. His voice tightened. When your mother found out about us, she made her position very clear. Either I walked away, or she would destroy what little career I had. She had connections at every firm in the city. She could have blacklisted me permanently. So you left. I left. But not because I didn't love you. He turned to look at her directly. I left because I thought I could become someone she couldn't dismiss. I thought if I built something undeniable, I could come back for you. I could prove I was worthy. You should have told me. I know. I was young and stupid and full of pride. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you out of the fight. He shook his head. Instead, I just made you think I didn't care. The car pulled through an iron gate, and a sprawling estate came into view. White columns. Manicured gardens. The kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Where are we? Celeste asked. My home. Or one of them. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact. I told you I was going to build something undeniable. I did. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Celeste stared at the house, trying to reconcile the struggling architect she had known with the man who owned this estate. How much did things change after you left? She asked quietly. Everything changed. I moved to New York. I started my own firm. I developed a software platform for architectural design that got acquired by a tech giant for more money than I knew existed. He paused. I'm worth $4 billion now, Celeste. And none of it meant anything because I couldn't share it with you. She turned to look at him. Really look at him. He was older now. Harder around the edges. The hungry young man she remembered had been replaced by someone more formidable. But underneath the expensive suit and the carefully controlled expression, she could still see the person she had fallen in love with. I spent 7 years believing you didn't want me, she whispered. I spent 7 years trying to forget you. Did it work? No. The word came out before she could stop it. It never worked. Not for a single day. Marcus reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm against her cold fingers. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. I'm sorry, he said. For leaving. For not fighting harder. For every letter you never read and every year you spent thinking I didn't care. Don't apologize. Celeste squeezed his hand. You came back. You stopped my wedding. You stood in front of everyone I know and demanded I look at you. I couldn't let you marry him. Not when I knew the truth. What truth? Marcus's expression darkened. The letters aren't the only thing Victor was hiding. He's not the man your family thinks he is, Celeste. He's not even close. A chill ran down her spine. What do you mean? Come inside. I'll show you everything. He opened the car door and extended his hand. Celeste gathered her wedding dress and stepped out onto the gravel driveway. Behind her, the sun was setting over Charleston, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in the city, her abandoned wedding was dissolving into scandal. Her mother was probably sedating herself with wine. Victor was probably making threatening phone calls. But standing on Marcus Cole's driveway, still wearing her wedding dress, Celeste felt something she hadn't experienced in 7 years. Hope. The interior of Marcus's estate was nothing like Celeste expected. She had imagined cold marble and modern minimalism. Instead, she found warm wood, soft lighting, and walls covered with architectural sketches framed like precious art. A fireplace crackled in the main living room despite the summer heat. Books lined shelves that stretched to the ceiling. "This doesn't look like a billionaire's house," she said, running her fingers along a worn leather armchair. "That's because most billionaires have no taste." Marcus shrugged off his jacket and tossed it over a chair. "I spent years designing spaces I couldn't afford. When I finally could afford them, I built what I actually wanted. Which is a home. Not a monument." Celeste sank into the armchair. The adrenaline that had carried her through the past hour was fading, replaced by exhaustion that settled into her bones. She was still wearing her wedding dress. She had no phone, no purse, no identification. Everything she owned was either at her parents' house or at the apartment she had shared with Victor. "I don't have anything," she realized aloud. "No clothes. No money. Nothing. You have everything you need right here." Marcus crouched in front of her, meeting her eyes at her level. "I have guest rooms. I have staff who can get you anything you want. And I have 7 years of explaining to do. The truth about Victor. You said you'd show me. I will. But first," he stood and walked to a side table, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He handed one to Celeste. "You need a drink. And probably some food. And definitely a change of clothes." Celeste took the glass but didn't drink. "I need answers more than I need dinner." "I know." Marcus sat across from her, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "But some answers are easier to hear on a full stomach." "That bad?" "Worse." A knock interrupted them. A middle-aged woman in a simple black dress appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Cole. The guest suite is prepared." She glanced at Celeste with carefully masked curiosity. "And dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. "Thank you, Margaret." Marcus turned to Celeste. "Why don't you change first? Margaret can show you to the guest room. There should be clothes in the closet that fit." Celeste raised an eyebrow. "You happen to have women's clothes in my size?" "I had them delivered this morning." He met her skeptical gaze without flinching. "I told you, I've spent months preparing for this. I wasn't going to rescue you from your wedding and then leave you wearing a 20-pound dress all night. You were that confident I'd come with you?" "No. I was that hopeful." The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She set down her untouched whiskey and stood, gathering her dress with as much dignity as she could manage. 20 minutes, she said. "Then you tell me everything. Deal." The guest suite was larger than Celeste's entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the room, draped in crisp white linens. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. And true to Marcus's word, the closet contained clothes in her exact size, simple, elegant pieces that probably cost more than her monthly salary. She chose a cream-colored blouse and dark slacks, then caught her reflection in the mirror. Her wedding makeup was smeared. Her hair had escaped its elaborate updo. She looked like a woman who had just survived a hurricane. She supposed she had. As she washed her face and attempted to tame her hair, her mind kept circling back to the same questions. What had Victor been hiding? Why had Marcus spent months investigating her fiancé? And how had her mother looked her in the eye for 7 years while burning letters from the man she loved? A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. "Dinner is served, miss." Margaret's voice came through the door. Celeste took one last look at her reflection. The woman staring back looked exhausted, confused, and completely overwhelmed. But she also looked free. For the first time in 7 years, Celeste Monroe looked free. Dinner was simple. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, crusty bread still warm from the oven. Celeste hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite hit her tongue. Marcus watched her eat with an expression that hovered between amusement and concern. "When did you last have a meal?" he asked. "I don't know. Yesterday maybe? Victor didn't want me to look bloated in the wedding photos, so I've been on a liquid diet for the past week." Marcus's jaw tightened. Of course he did. It seemed reasonable at the time. Celeste set down her fork. A lot of things seemed reasonable at the time. That's how controlling people operate. They make unreasonable demands seem like basic expectations. They isolate you so gradually that you don't notice until you're completely alone. Celeste felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "You're describing Victor."
"I'm describing a pattern. One I've seen documented across multiple sources." Marcus pushed his plate aside and leaned forward. "Victor Ashford isn't just a controlling fiancé, Celeste. He's a predator." The word hung in the air between them. "That's a serious accusation." "I have serious evidence." Marcus stood and retrieved a leather briefcase from a nearby desk. He set it on the table and opened it, revealing stacks of documents, photographs, and official-looking reports. "I've spent 8 months compiling this. Everything you need to know about the man you almost married." Celeste's hands trembled as she reached for the first document. It was a police report from 7 years ago. A woman named Sarah Mitchell had filed assault charges against Victor Ashford. The charges were dropped 3 weeks later. She withdrew her complaint after Victor's family paid her off, Marcus explained. $200,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. The next document was another police report. Different woman. Different year. Same outcome. "There are 4 of them," Marcus said quietly. 4 women who tried to report Victor for domestic violence or assault. All of them were paid to disappear. All of them signed NDAs. None of them will speak publicly about what happened. Celeste's vision blurred. "I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to know. The Ashford family has spent millions keeping Victor's history buried. His father has political ambitions. A son with a violence problem would derail everything." She flipped to the next section. Photographs this time. Women she didn't recognize, their faces marked with bruises they tried to hide behind sunglasses and scarves. "These were taken by a private investigator I hired," Marcus continued. "These women are Victor's ex-girlfriends. The ones who got away before things escalated too far. Most of them wouldn't talk to my investigators, but a few did." "Off the record. What did they say?" "That he was charming at first. Attentive. Generous. And then something would set him off, a perceived slight, a moment of independence, an opinion he didn't share, and the mask would slip." Marcus's voice was carefully controlled, but Celeste could hear the rage beneath it. One woman said he threw her down a flight of stairs because she smiled at a waiter. Another said he locked her in a closet for 8 hours because she wanted to visit her mother without him. Celeste pushed the photographs away. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them. "I was with him for 2 years," she whispered. "He never He was waiting. Marcus's interruption was gentle but firm. These patterns always escalate after commitment. Marriage. Pregnancy. Something that makes leaving more difficult. He paused. You were 3 hours away from being legally bound to him. From having your finances entangled with his. From being isolated in his world with no easy exit. The salmon she had eaten threatened to come back up. Celeste pressed her hand against her mouth, breathing slowly through her nose. She couldn't finish the sentence. But you didn't. Marcus moved around the table and knelt beside her chair. You're here. You're safe. And he will never touch you. How can you be sure? Because I will spend every dollar I have to destroy him if he tries. The promise in Marcus's voice was absolute. I've already started. Victor's family has been hiding his secrets for years. I have enough evidence to expose everything. The police reports. The payoffs. The NDAs. All of it. If you release that, his political career is over. His family's reputation is ruined. And every woman he's hurt will finally have validation. Celeste stared at him. You would do that? Declare war on one of the most powerful families in Charleston? I would do anything to protect you. He took her hands in his. I lost you once because I wasn't strong enough to fight. I'm not making that mistake again. Now, if this story is speaking to you so far, do me a favor and hit that like button. Let me know you're riding with Celeste and Marcus through this. The next part is going to get intense. They talked until well past midnight. Celeste read every document in Marcus's briefcase. She studied the photographs, the reports, the carefully compiled timeline of Victor's history. The evidence was damning. Overwhelming. Impossible to dismiss. And yet. I don't understand how I missed this, she said, staring at the document spread across the dining table. I lived with him for 6 months. I was going to marry him. How did I not see what he was? Because you weren't supposed to see it. Marcus was nursing his third whiskey, watching her with patient eyes. Victor has spent his entire life learning to hide who he really is. His family taught him well. Charm in public. Control in private. And anyone who threatens the illusion gets paid off or destroyed. But there must have been signs. Red flags. Something. Were there? Celeste closed her eyes, forcing herself to remember. The way Victor always needed to know where she was. The subtle comments about her friends being beneath her. The times he'd cancel plans she'd made without consulting him. The cold silences that could last for days when she disappointed him somehow. She had explained all of it away. He was protective because he loved her. He wanted to elevate her social circle because he cared about her future. He needed to be consulted because they were partners. But were they partners? Or was she just learning to disappear inside his shadow? I told myself it was normal, she whispered. I told myself all relationships require compromise. Compromise goes both ways. What did Victor ever compromise for you? She couldn't think of a single example. That's how it works, Marcus said quietly. The erosion is so gradual that you don't notice until you've lost yourself entirely. And by then, you're too invested to walk away. Too isolated to ask for help. Too convinced that the problem is you. Celeste opened her eyes. How do you know so much about this? Because I've made it my business to understand. Because I spent 2 months interviewing psychologists and domestic violence experts while building this case. And because, he paused, something shifting behind his eyes. Because I watched my mother live through something similar. The admission hung in the air between them. Your mother. My father wasn't a good man. Marcus set down his whiskey glass. He was charming in public. Everyone in our neighborhood thought he was wonderful. But at home, behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. I didn't know. I never told you. We only had 8 months together before I left, and I wasn't ready to talk about it then. He stared into the empty fireplace. My mother stayed with him for 15 years. She kept believing he would change. She kept making excuses. She kept shrinking herself to fit his demands. What happened to her? She died when I was 19. Heart attack, officially. But I think she just gave up. His voice was carefully flat, but Celeste could hear the old wound beneath it. She spent her whole life trying to be small enough to survive my father. And eventually, she just disappeared. Celeste reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were cold despite the warm room. I'm sorry. I don't want your pity. I want you to understand why I couldn't let you marry Victor. He met her eyes. When I found out who he really was, when I understood what you were walking into, I saw my mother's face. I saw 15 years of bruises and broken promises and a woman who forgot she was allowed to want things for herself. I'm not your mother. No. You're stronger than she ever had the chance to be. But even strong women can be broken by the right monster. His grip on her hand tightened. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. Even if you hated me for stopping the wedding. Even if you never forgave me. At least you would be alive and free. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of his confession settling over them like a blanket. I don't hate you, Celeste said finally. I don't think I could hate you if I tried. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've hurt you in ways I'm still understanding. You also saved me. She squeezed his hand. Whatever happened before, whatever mistakes we both made, you saved me today. I'm not going to forget that. Marcus's expression softened. For a moment, he looked like the young man she remembered, vulnerable, hopeful, uncertain if he deserved good things. It's late, he said. You should sleep. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Tomorrow? Your family. The media. Victor's response. We need to be prepared for all of it. Celeste nodded slowly. The adrenaline had long since faded, leaving behind exhaustion that weighed on her like lead. The guest room is upstairs, Marcus continued. Second door on the left. Margaret left everything you might need. She stood, then hesitated. Marcus? Yes? 7 years ago, when you left, what was the last letter you wrote me? The one you never sent? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, not from the envelope he'd shown her earlier, but from somewhere closer to his heart. This one, he said, handing it to her. I never mailed it because I thought it was too late. I thought you'd moved on. Celeste took the letter but didn't open it. Can I read it alone? Of course. She turned toward the stairs, the paper warm in her hand, carrying the weight of words she'd waited 7 years to receive. The guest room was quiet except for the distant sound of cicadas through the open window. Celeste sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the clothes Marcus had provided, the folded letter resting in her lap like a sacred thing. Part of her was afraid to open it. As long as the letter remained sealed, its contents existed as pure potential, every hope she'd ever harbored about Marcus's feelings preserved in possibility. But she was done living in uncertainty. She unfolded the paper. The handwriting was Marcus's, she would have recognized it anywhere, but something about it felt different. Rawer. Less controlled. Celeste, she read aloud, her voice barely a whisper in the empty room. I've written you 37 letters. I've poured every hope and regret and dream I have onto paper and sent it to you. And every single one has come back unopened. I'm starting to understand that you don't want to hear from me. That whatever we had wasn't strong enough to survive what I did. That leaving you was a mistake I can never undo. But I need to say this once, even if you never read it. I love you. I loved you when I was nobody. I love you now that I'm somebody. I will love you when I'm old and gray and everything I've built has crumbled to dust. There has never been anyone else. There will never be anyone else. You are the only person who ever saw me, not what I could become, not what I could provide, but who I actually am. And I destroyed that because I was too proud to ask for help. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to know that somewhere in the world, there is a man who will never stop loving you. Even if you marry someone else. Even if you have children with him and build a life I'm not part of. Even if you forget my name and my face and everything we shared. I will still love you. I will always love you. Yours, in this life and whatever comes after. Marcus. Celeste read the letter 3 times. Then she pressed it against her chest and cried. She cried for the 7 years of silence. She cried for the mother who betrayed her. She cried for the man she almost married without knowing who he really was. She cried for the life she could have had if one single letter had reached her hands. And somewhere in the middle of all that grief, something else emerged. Relief. Because she wasn't crazy. She wasn't foolish for never forgetting Marcus. She wasn't weak for feeling like something essential was missing from her carefully constructed life. She had been right all along. And now, finally, she had the chance to make a different choice. Morning came too quickly. Celeste woke to sunlight streaming through the French doors and the smell of coffee drifting up from somewhere below. For a brief, disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then everything came rushing back. The wedding. Marcus. The letters. Victor. She sat up, her heart racing. Outside, birds sang in the garden as if the world hadn't completely transformed overnight. As if everything was normal. Nothing was normal. She found her way downstairs, following the scent of coffee to a sun-filled breakfast room where Marcus sat reading a tablet, a half-empty cup at his elbow. He looked up when she entered. Good morning. How did you sleep? Badly. Celeste sank into the chair across from him. I kept dreaming I was still at the church. That I said yes. That you never came. Nightmares. The worst kind. She accepted the coffee Margaret poured for her. What's happening out there? In the real world? Marcus turned the tablet toward her. Headlines filled the screen. Ashford wedding scandal, billionaire steals bride from altar. Charleston society wedding descends into chaos. Who is Marcus Cole? The man who stopped a wedding. Celeste skimmed the articles, her stomach sinking with each paragraph. The coverage was breathless, scandalous, and almost entirely inaccurate. They're calling me a gold digger, she said flatly. They're saying I planned this. That I was having an affair with you the whole time. The Ashford family moves quickly. They've already hired a PR firm to control the narrative. And my family? Marcus hesitated. Your mother gave a statement this morning. She called your behavior a temporary breakdown and expressed hope that you would come to your senses soon. Of course she did. Your father didn't comment. Celeste absorbed this information, trying to feel something beyond the numb exhaustion that had settled over her. I need to face them, she said finally. My parents. I can't hide here forever. You're not hiding. You're regrouping. Marcus set down his coffee. And you don't have to face anyone until you're ready. When will I be ready? When you decide you are. She stared at the headlines on his tablet, watching her old life burn in real time. Victor isn't going to accept this, she said. He's going to come after both of us. I'm counting on it. What? Victor's power comes from secrecy. The moment he attacks publicly, he exposes himself to scrutiny. And the moment people start scrutinizing Victor Ashford, they're going to find things the Ashford family has spent decades burying. Celeste shook her head. You make it sound like a chess game. It is a chess game. One I've been playing for months. He leaned forward, his expression intense. Victor thinks he's the most powerful person in this situation. He's wrong. He just doesn't know it yet. And what about me? Am I just another piece on your board? The question came out sharper than she intended. Something flickered across Marcus's face, hurt, maybe, or resignation. You were never a piece, Celeste. You were always the point. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. Everything I've done for the last 7 years. Building my company, accumulating resources, learning to play the games rich people play, all of it was about becoming someone who could protect you. Someone who could stand beside you instead of being dismissed. I never asked you to do that. I know. I did it anyway. He turned to face her. Because loving you was the only thing that ever made sense. Even when I couldn't have you. Even when I thought you'd moved on. You were the reason I kept going. Celeste felt tears threatening to fall again. She had spent 7 years believing she was forgotten, that she was a mistake Marcus had moved past. Learning the truth, that she had been his motivation, his anchor, his purpose, was almost too much to process. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust that this is real. Then don't trust it yet. Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. Don't trust me. Don't trust the letters or the explanations or anything I've told you. Just stay. Let me show you who I am now. Let me prove that the man who left you is gone. What if the man who came back is just as broken? Then we'll be broken together. He took her hand. We'll figure it out as we go. Before I continue with the next part of this story, take a quick second to subscribe to Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. That way, you won't miss any of our stories. Trust me, the next chapter of Celeste and Marcus's story is one you don't want to skip. 3 hours later, a black SUV pulled through the gates of Marcus's estate. Celeste watched from the window as it parked near the main entrance. The door opened, and a man she didn't recognize stepped out, middle-aged, impeccably dressed, carrying a leather briefcase that probably contained documents that would determine her future. Who is that? David Chen. My attorney. Marcus joined her at the window. He's been handling the legal aspects of this situation. Legal aspects. Victor's family has already filed 3 separate motions against you this morning. Breach of contract, apparently your engagement agreement had clauses neither of us knew about. Defamation, based on nothing. And theft. Theft? I didn't steal anything. They're claiming you took jewelry and gifts given to you during the engagement and that those items were conditional on the marriage taking place. Celeste laughed bitterly. I left without my phone, Marcus. Without my purse. I'm wearing clothes you bought because I don't own anything except a wedding dress I never want to see again. I know. These motions are harassment, not legitimate legal claims. David will handle them. Marcus turned from the window. But there's something else. Something more complicated. What? Your mother. She wants to see you. The statement landed like a physical blow. Celeste felt her body stiffen, her hands clenching at her sides. No. Celeste. She burned your letters, Marcus. For 3 years, she intercepted every attempt you made to contact me. She let me believe you abandoned me. She watched me grieve and never said a word. I know. She pushed me toward Victor. She arranged introductions, encouraged the relationship, helped plan the wedding. She knew what kind of man he was, she had to have known, and she didn't care. Celeste's voice cracked. She chose her social standing over my safety. She chose status over her own daughter. I know. Marcus's voice was gentle. And you have every right to refuse. I'll tell David to send her away. She's here? Now? She arrived 10 minutes ago. She's waiting in the car. Celeste moved to the window again. A second vehicle had pulled up behind David Chen's SUV, a silver Mercedes she recognized immediately. Through the tinted windows, she could just make out her mother's silhouette. What does she want? To talk, apparently. To explain. There's no explanation that makes this okay. No. There isn't. Marcus stood beside her. But sometimes closure doesn't come from acceptable explanations. Sometimes it comes from finally saying the things you've been holding inside. Celeste stared at the Mercedes for a long moment. Every instinct told her to stay inside, to let Marcus's security escort her mother off the property, to never speak to Eleanor Monroe again. But there was something else. Something deeper. A question that had haunted her for 7 years, growing louder with every lonely night and every forced smile. Why? Why had her mother chosen to destroy the one relationship that made her happy? Why had she burned those letters? Why had she pushed her toward a man like Victor? The answer probably wouldn't satisfy her. It might even make things worse. But not knowing was its own kind of prison. Send her in, Celeste said finally. But I want you there. I can't do this alone. You'll never have to do anything alone again. Eleanor Monroe entered Marcus's living room like a queen visiting enemy territory. She was dressed immaculately, cream-colored suit, pearl earrings, not a hair out of place. Only her eyes betrayed her agitation, darting around the expensive furnishings as if cataloging their value. Celeste. Her voice was carefully controlled. Thank God you're safe. I've been worried sick. Have you? Eleanor's composure flickered at the coldness in her daughter's tone. Of course I have. When I heard what happened at the church, I thought I might have a heart attack. The scandal, the embarrassment, the scandal. Celeste cut her off. That's what worried you? Not that I'd been lied to for 7 years. Not that you'd been feeding me to a monster. I don't know what he's told you, Eleanor gestured dismissively toward Marcus, but you can't trust him. He's manipulating you. He's always been a manipulator. Is that why you burned his letters? To protect me from manipulation? The blood drained from Eleanor's face. Yes. I know about the letters. Celeste stepped forward. 37 of them. Written over 3 years. Every single one intercepted before it reached me. Were you going to tell me about that, Mother? Was that part of your worried sick routine? I was protecting you. From what? From a man who loved me? From someone who wanted to build a life with me? From a nobody. Eleanor's voice hardened. From a struggling architect who couldn't provide for you. From a future of uncertainty and struggle and social irrelevance. And Victor? What exactly was Victor protecting me from? Victor was appropriate. Victor was from the right family. Victor could give you the life you were meant to have. Victor is a predator. Celeste's voice rose. He's hurt women, Mother. Multiple women. And his family has been paying to cover it up for years. That's ridiculous. That's exactly the kind of lie Marcus Cole would invent to justify his behavior. I have the police reports. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but firm. I have sworn statements from witnesses. I have documentation of payoffs and non-disclosure agreements spanning more than a decade. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Fabricated. All of it. Then you won't mind if I release everything to the press? Let the public decide what's fabricated and what isn't. The threat hung in the air. Eleanor's composure cracked further, her carefully maintained facade beginning to crumble. You wouldn't dare. The scandal would destroy Victor. And probably his father's political career. Marcus shrugged. I'm comfortable with that outcome. You're bluffing. I never bluff. Eleanor turned back to her daughter, her expression shifting from anger to something that almost resembled desperation. Celeste, please. Come home. We can fix this. We can say you had a breakdown, that you weren't in your right mind. Victor would take you back if you. If I what? Apologized for embarrassing him? Agreed to pretend I didn't just learn he's an abuser? Celeste shook her head slowly. I'm not coming home, Mother. I'm not going back to Victor. And I am certainly not taking advice from the woman who spent 7 years lying to my face. Everything I did was for your benefit. Everything you did was for your benefit. For your social standing. For your image of the perfect family with the perfect daughter and the perfect son-in-law. Celeste's voice cracked. Did you even think about what I wanted? Did my happiness ever matter to you at all? Eleanor's mouth opened and closed. For the first time in Celeste's memory, her mother had no response. I needed you. Celeste's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I was grieving, Mother. I thought the man I loved had abandoned me. I thought I wasn't enough. And you knew the truth the entire time. You watched me suffer, and you never said a word. I thought I was helping. You were burying me alive. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere Celeste had never allowed herself to access. Every day I spent believing Marcus didn't want me, I died a little more inside. Every date with Victor, every step toward that wedding, I was disappearing. And you smiled and planned and congratulated yourself for saving me from a life of passion and purpose. That's not fair. Fair? Celeste laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? I'm standing in a stranger's house wearing borrowed clothes because I left my entire life behind to escape a man you chose for me. A violent man. A dangerous man. And you're worried about fairness? The room fell silent. Eleanor stood frozen, her carefully constructed world visibly shattering around her. For one brief moment, something human flickered behind her eyes, regret, perhaps, or the beginnings of genuine remorse. Then her expression hardened again. You'll regret this, she said coldly. When the money runs out. When the scandal destroys your career. When he leaves you again. Get out. The words came from Marcus, not Celeste. He moved to stand between them, his body a protective barrier. You've said enough. Leave now, or I'll have security escort you off the property. Eleanor gathered what remained of her dignity. This isn't over. Victor's family can bring whatever they want. I'll be ready. Marcus gestured toward the door. Goodbye, Mrs. Monroe. She left without another word. The door closed behind her. And Celeste, finally allowing the tears to fall, let Marcus hold her while she mourned the mother she'd never really had. The afternoon passed in fragments. David Chen reviewed legal strategies in the study. Phone calls were made, documents were signed, plans were set in motion. Celeste participated when necessary but spent most of her time staring out windows, processing the enormity of what had happened. By evening, she had lost track of how many hours she'd been awake. The exhaustion was bone-deep now, the kind that no amount of sleep could immediately fix. Marcus found her on the balcony outside the guest room, watching the sun set over his gardens. Victor's family made a statement, he said, joining her at the railing. They're demanding a full apology and the return of the engagement ring. I'm not wearing a ring. I left it at the church. I know. We retrieved it. It's currently being appraised by a jeweler who owes me a favor. Celeste turned to look at him. Why would you appraise it? Because Victor's family is claiming the ring is worth $200,000. In reality, it's worth about $40,000, and half the diamonds are lab-created. He smiled slightly. His family has been overstating his generosity for years. It's going to be very embarrassing when the truth comes out. Despite everything, Celeste felt herself smiling. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying watching people who hurt you face consequences. Yes. That's not healthy. Probably not. But I've spent 7 years being healthy and miserable. I'm ready to try something different. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and violet. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell was ringing, marking the end of another day. My whole life is different now, Celeste said quietly. Yesterday, I knew exactly who I was and what my future looked like. Today, I don't know anything. Is that terrifying? Yes. But also, she paused, searching for the right word. Also liberating. Like I've been holding my breath for 7 years and finally remembered how to exhale. Marcus moved closer, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I don't want to rush you, he said carefully. Whatever happens between us, I want it to happen on your timeline. I've already waited 7 years. I can wait longer if that's what you need. What if I don't want to wait? The question surprised them both. Celeste felt her heart racing, felt the familiar pull toward this man who had upended her entire existence twice now. Then we don't wait. Marcus turned to face her fully. Then we figure out what this is, together. Step by step. Day by day. It won't be easy. Victor isn't going to stop. My mother isn't going to stop. The next few months are going to be chaos. I know. I'm damaged, Marcus. I spent 7 years building walls around my heart. I don't know if I can tear them down. I know that too. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to be whole. I'm asking you to let me be here while you figure out who you want to become. Celeste felt tears threatening again. But this time, they weren't tears of grief or anger. They were tears of hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and she let him. The sun finished setting behind them. And somewhere in the distance, the church bells finally fell silent. That night, Celeste dreamed of fire. She was standing in her childhood bedroom, watching flames consume the letters Marcus had written. Her mother stood beside her, striking match after match, each one turning another year of love into ash. This is for your own good, Eleanor kept saying. This is what mothers do. Celeste woke gasping, her sheets tangled around her legs, the nightmare still clinging to her consciousness. It was nearly 3 a.m. The house was silent. She got out of bed and made her way downstairs, following the faint glow of light coming from the study. She found Marcus there, sitting at his desk, surrounded by documents, an empty coffee cup at his elbow. He looked up when she entered. Couldn't sleep? Nightmares. He nodded as if this was expected. Want to talk about it? Not really. She curled up on the leather couch across from his desk. What are you working on? Strategy. Victor's family is going to escalate tomorrow. They're filing an injunction to freeze your personal assets, not that you have many, and launching a media campaign designed to make you unemployable. Charming. Standard warfare tactics. They want to make your life uncomfortable enough that you come back to Victor just to make it stop. That's never going to happen. I know. But they don't know that yet. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I'm planning a counteroffensive. By the end of the week, the Ashford family is going to have much bigger problems than a runaway bride. Celeste studied him, this man she had loved as a boy, transformed by time and ambition into someone harder, sharper, more formidable. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Building all of this? Becoming someone who thinks in terms of counteroffensives and strategic warfare? Every day. He met her eyes. But it's also why I was able to stop your wedding. Why I have the resources to protect you now. The same ambition that drove me away from you is what allowed me to come back strong enough to fight for you. Ironic. Life usually is. She pulled a blanket over her legs, watching him work. There was something comforting about being in the same room as him, even in silence. Something that felt like coming home after a long journey. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Anything. During those 7 years, when you thought I was ignoring your letters, did you ever try to move on? Date other people? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully measured. I tried. A few times. There were women who were interested, the money attracts a certain type, and occasionally I would convince myself that I needed to let you go. What happened? Nothing lasted. No one ever felt right. He set down his pen. I kept comparing everyone to you. Your laugh. Your intelligence. The way you made me feel seen. He shook his head. Eventually, I stopped trying. It seemed cruel to keep disappointing people who deserved better than someone who was already taken. You weren't taken. You were free. Legally, yes. But here, he tapped his chest. I was never free. I never wanted to be. Celeste felt the truth of his words settling over her like a blanket. She had experienced the same thing with Victor. The going through motions of a relationship, the performance of happiness that never quite reached her heart. I told myself I was over you, she admitted. I told myself our relationship was just a youthful infatuation, that what Victor offered was more mature, more sustainable. What do you think now? I think I was lying to myself. I think I've been lying to myself for 7 years because the alternative, accepting that I lost the love of my life, was too painful to face. Marcus left his desk and crossed the room. He sat beside her on the couch, close but not touching. You didn't lose me, he said quietly. I was stolen from you. There's a difference. Does it matter? The result was the same. It matters because you need to stop blaming yourself. He reached out and took her hand. You didn't fail us, Celeste. You were sabotaged by people who should have protected you. Your mother. Victor. Everyone who benefited from keeping us apart. I should have fought harder. I should have tried to find you. With what information? Your mother told you I'd moved on. Your friends told you the same thing. Everyone in your world was invested in the same lie. He squeezed her hand. You believed what you were told because you had no reason not to. That's not weakness. That's trust. And the people who exploited that trust are the ones who should be ashamed. Celeste felt something loosening in her chest. A weight she'd been carrying for 7 years, finally beginning to lift. "When does this stop hurting?" she whispered. "I don't know. But I promise you won't have to feel it alone anymore." She leaned against his shoulder, letting her head rest in the hollow of his neck. His arm came around her, warm and solid. Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. And for the first time in 7 years, Celeste allowed herself to believe that everything might actually be okay.
The first week after the wedding that wasn't passed in a blur of legal documents and media chaos. Celeste watched from the safety of Marcus's estate as her old life burned to the ground. The Charleston Society pages ran daily updates on the scandal. Her former colleagues at the hospital sent cautious texts, unsure whether to offer support or distance themselves. Her social media accounts, which she couldn't access without her phone, apparently exploded with comments ranging from sympathetic to vicious. Victor's family, true to Marcus's predictions, escalated daily. On Monday, they filed the asset freeze. On Tuesday, they launched a coordinated media campaign painting Celeste as an unstable gold digger who had planned the entire spectacle. On Wednesday, anonymous sources began leaking fabricated stories about her supposed affairs during the engagement. By Thursday, Celeste's nursing license was under review pending an ethics investigation based on complaints that had materialized from nowhere. "They're trying to destroy me," she said, staring at the official notice David Chen had just delivered. "My career. My reputation. Everything. They're trying to break you," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. Destruction is permanent. This is pressure designed to make you surrender. And if I don't surrender, then they'll eventually overreach. And when they do, we'll be ready." Celeste set down the notice. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "How long do we have to wait?" "Not long." Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed her a timeline. "Victor's father is announcing his Senate campaign next month. The family needs this scandal contained before then. They're going to make a move soon, something dramatic enough to end this quickly." "What kind of move?" "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, it's going to expose them more than they realize." Celeste studied the timeline, trying to see the patterns Marcus saw. Political ambitions. Public image. The desperate need to control narratives. They're not used to losing, she realized. They've always been able to buy or bully their way out of problems. Exactly. And that's their weakness. They don't know how to handle someone who can't be bought and won't be bullied. You. Us. He met her eyes. "I have the resources, but you have something more important. You have the truth. And the truth, properly deployed, is more powerful than all the Ashford money in the world." Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Celeste was finishing breakfast when Margaret appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "Miss Monroe. There's a gentleman here to see you. He says he's your father." Celeste's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "My father? James Monroe. He's waiting in the front parlor." She hadn't spoken to her father since the wedding. He had been notably absent from her mother's media campaign, neither defending nor condemning his daughter's choices. She had assumed he was simply following Eleanor's lead, as he had done for most of their marriage. But he was here. Alone. "Show him in," Celeste said, setting down her cup. "And please find Marcus. He should be part of this conversation." Her father entered the breakfast room slowly, as if uncertain of his welcome. James Monroe was a tall man in his early 60s, distinguished in that understated way that old Charleston money cultivated. But today, he looked tired. Older than Celeste remembered. "Celeste." His voice was rough. "Thank you for seeing me. I'm surprised you came. I should have come sooner." He glanced around the room, taking in the expensive furnishings with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to evaluating wealth. Your mother doesn't know I'm here. She thinks I'm at the club. Why the secrecy? Because what I have to say would complicate things at home. He sat down across from her, his hands folded on the table. And because I owe you honesty, even if it comes too late. Marcus entered the room then, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. James Monroe looked up, and something passed between the two men, not hostility, but wariness. Mr. Cole. Mr. Monroe. I understand you're the one who exposed my wife's actions regarding the letters. I am. James nodded slowly. I want you to know that I had no part in that deception. I didn't know about the letters until 2 days ago, when Eleanor finally confessed what she had done. Celeste felt her heart clench. You didn't know. I suspected something was wrong. When you first told us Marcus had left, something about the story didn't sit right with me. You were so devastated, so certain that he had simply abandoned you without explanation. Her father's voice grew heavy. The Marcus Cole I had met during those few months didn't seem like a man who would disappear without a word. Then why didn't you say something? Because your mother was so certain she was right. Because I convinced myself that I was imagining things. Because. He paused, his composure cracking. Because I was a coward. I have always been a coward when it comes to standing up to your mother. The admission hung in the air between them. Celeste had known this truth about her father for most of her life, but hearing him acknowledge it directly was different. Why are you here now? She asked. Because I can't be a coward anymore. Not about this. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. I've spent the last 3 days gathering information. Things your mother told me over the years that didn't make sense until now. Things about Victor that she dismissed when I raised concerns. Celeste took the envelope but didn't open it. What kind of concerns? 3 years ago, I was at a charity event in Savannah. I ran into a woman named Patricia Vance. She was on the board of a foundation we both supported. She had been engaged to Victor Ashford 6 years earlier. Her father's voice tightened. She had too much wine at dinner and told me things. Things about how the engagement ended. Things about bruises and broken bones and settlements that required her silence. You knew about his history with women? I suspected. I raised my concerns with your mother, and she told me I was being paranoid. That Patricia Vance was a known liar. That the Ashfords had assured her Victor had changed. He shook his head. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than fighting. Celeste's hands tightened on the envelope. So you let me walk into an engagement with a man you suspected was dangerous? Yes. The word was barely audible. And I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. Marcus moved to stand beside Celeste, his hand resting on her shoulder. His presence grounded her, gave her strength to keep listening. What's in the envelope? Marcus asked. Patricia Vance's current contact information. She's willing to speak on the record about her experience with Victor. I also included the names of 2 other women I've managed to identify, women who received settlements from the Ashford family. James looked at Marcus directly. I understand you've been building a case against Victor. This information might be useful. Marcus took the envelope and opened it, scanning the contents. His expression sharpened with professional interest. This is exactly what we needed. He looked up. Why are you giving this to us? You're betraying your wife. Your social circle. Everything you've built. Because my daughter almost married a monster, and I did nothing to stop it. James's voice broke. Because I have watched her suffer for 7 years, knowing something was wrong, and I chose comfort over courage every single time. He turned back to Celeste, and for the first time, she saw tears in her father's eyes. I can't undo what's been done. I can't give you back the years you lost. But I can choose differently now. He reached across the table and took her hand. I'm sorry, Celeste. I'm so deeply sorry. Celeste felt her own tears threatening. The anger she had carried toward her parents was still there, still burning. But beneath it, there was something else. The smallest flicker of hope. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again. I understand. But I'm glad you came. I'm glad you're finally choosing to be honest. Her father squeezed her hand, then released it. He stood slowly, gathering what remained of his composure. Your mother is going to realize I've been here eventually. When she does, things at home are going to become difficult. What will you do? Something I should have done years ago. He straightened his jacket. I'm going to stop being a coward. He left without another word. The room was silent for a long moment after his departure. That was unexpected, Marcus said finally. That was my father actually being a father for the first time in my memory. Celeste wiped her eyes. I'm not sure how to process it. You don't have to process it right now. You just have to let it exist. Marcus set the envelope on the table. But this information changes things. With Patricia Vance willing to go on record, we have a credible witness who can speak publicly about Victor's behavior. That's going to make the Ashford family very nervous. Nervous enough to make a mistake. Nervous enough to accelerate their timeline. Which means we need to be ready for whatever they do next. If you're still with me on this journey, hit that subscribe button for Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. The story is about to take a sharp turn, and you're going to want to see what happens when the Ashford family finally makes their move. The mistake came 3 days later. Celeste was in Marcus's study, reviewing documents for the ongoing legal battles, when his phone buzzed with an alert. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. What is it? She asked. Victor just gave an interview to Charleston's biggest news station. It's airing live. He turned on the television mounted on the study wall. Victor Ashford's face filled the screen, handsome, composed, radiating the manufactured sincerity that had once fooled Celeste so completely. Devastated by what happened, Victor was saying, his voice thick with performed emotion. I loved Celeste. I wanted to spend my life with her. And to have her leave me at the altar for a man who had abandoned her years ago, a man who has clearly been manipulating her for his own purposes. It's heartbreaking. The interviewer, a polished woman in her 50s, nodded sympathetically. There have been allegations that your family has been trying to intimidate Miss Monroe since the wedding. Can you address those claims? Those allegations are coming from Marcus Cole and his legal team. Consider the source. Victor leaned forward, his expression earnest. Cole is a billionaire with unlimited resources and a clear agenda. He wants Celeste, and he's willing to say anything to justify his actions. What about the claims that you have a history of violence against women? Victor's composure flickered, just for a moment, before he recovered. Those claims are completely fabricated. I have never harmed any woman in my life. Mr. Cole is clearly desperate to damage my reputation, but he won't succeed. The truth always comes out. Celeste felt sick watching him. The performance was flawless. Every word calculated. Every expression designed to inspire sympathy. He's good, she said quietly. He's practiced, Marcus replied. But watch what happens next. The interviewer shuffled her papers. We've actually received some information that we'd like you to address. A woman named Patricia Vance has come forward claiming that she was engaged to you 6 years ago and that the engagement ended after you allegedly assaulted her. Victor's face went pale. Patricia Vance is a troubled woman with a history of making false accusations. Our family settled the matter years ago, and she signed an agreement promising never to speak publicly about. He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. So there was a settlement, the interviewer pressed. Regarding allegations of assault? That's not what I said. You just mentioned that your families settled the matter and that she signed an agreement. That sounds like a settlement to me. Victor's composure cracked completely. His face flushed red, and his eyes darted off camera, presumably toward his handlers, who had clearly not prepared him for this line of questioning. This interview is over, he said, standing abruptly. You ambushed me with false allegations and... Mr. Ashford, we simply asked you to respond to claims made by a credible witness. If the allegations are false, surely you can explain. But Victor was already removing his microphone, his movements jerky with barely contained rage. The camera caught his face as he stormed off set, a face that Celeste recognized. A face she had seen in private moments, when Victor thought no one was watching. The face of a man who was capable of terrible things. The broadcast cut to the stunned interviewer. Well. That was unexpected. We'll be right back after these messages. Marcus turned off the television. His expression was quietly triumphant. He admitted there was a settlement. On live television. He panicked, Celeste said. He wasn't prepared for the question. Because his handlers assumed Patricia Vance would stay silent. The NDA should have protected them. Marcus pulled out his phone. But NDAs can be challenged, especially when they're used to cover up criminal behavior. Patricia's lawyer has been building that case for weeks. The interview was timed perfectly. You planned this. I suggested that Patricia might want to share her story with a journalist who happened to be preparing a feature on Victor's family. He shrugged. The timing of the broadcast coinciding with Victor's live interview was purely coincidental. Celeste stared at him. You're terrifying sometimes. I'm effective. There's a difference. His expression softened. I told you they would overreach. Victor just admitted on national television that his family paid to silence a woman who accused him of assault. His father's Senate campaign is going to have to address this. The other women I've identified are going to see that Patricia spoke up and survived. The floodgates are about to open. And Victor? Victor is about to discover what happens when you can't buy your way out of consequences. The next 48 hours were chaos. Patricia Vance's full interview aired the following evening, a devastating account of her relationship with Victor, the escalating control and violence, the night that left her with a broken arm and 3 cracked ribs. She had photographs. She had medical records. She had the settlement agreement, which her lawyer argued was unenforceable because it had been used to conceal criminal conduct. By morning, 2 more women had come forward with similar stories. By evening, Victor Ashford's name was trending nationally, not as a society bachelor or political scion, but as an alleged serial abuser whose family had spent years covering up his crimes. Richard Ashford, Victor's father, held a press conference announcing the suspension of his Senate campaign pending a family matter. His face was gray as he read from prepared remarks, never making eye contact with the cameras. Eleanor Monroe, according to Celeste's father, had locked herself in her bedroom and refused to speak to anyone. And Victor himself had disappeared. No one seen him in 2 days, David Chen reported during an evening briefing. His phone is off. His credit cards haven't been used. The family's security team claims he's at an undisclosed location for his own protection. Protection from what? Celeste asked. Bad press. Protection from criminal investigation. Marcus exchanged a look with David. Tell her. The Charleston Police Department opened a formal investigation this morning based on the women's statements. They've issued a request for Victor to appear voluntarily for questioning. David paused. He hasn't responded. Celeste absorbed this information slowly. Victor, the man she had almost married, the man she had shared her life with for 2 years, was now potentially facing criminal charges for assaulting multiple women. How did I miss this? She whispered. How did I live with him and not see what he was? Because he was careful with you, Marcus said quietly. The pattern with abusers is often slow escalation. He hadn't reached the violent phase with you yet, he was still in the control phase, establishing dominance before the mask slipped completely. But it would have slipped. Eventually. Yes. Celeste closed her eyes. She thought about the wedding dress still crumpled somewhere in Marcus's house. She thought about the vows she had almost spoken. She thought about the life she had almost committed to. If you hadn't come, she said, her voice barely audible, I would be his wife right now. Legally bound to him. Isolated from everyone who might have helped me. But I did come. And you're not. Why did you wait so long? The question emerged before she could stop it, the question she had been avoiding for days. If you knew what Victor was, why did you let it go all the way to the wedding? Why not stop it sooner? Marcus was silent for a long moment. Because I wasn't sure you would choose me. What? I spent 7 years believing you had moved on. When I found out the truth about the letters, when I discovered what Victor really was, I wanted to come to you immediately. But my investigators warned me that approaching you directly might backfire. You had built a life with Victor. You had committed to him publicly. If I showed up with accusations against your fiancé, you might have dismissed them as jealousy or manipulation. So you waited until I was standing at the altar. I waited until you had no choice but to listen. Until the evidence was undeniable. Until the moment when everything was on the line and you would have to make a real decision. His voice tightened. Was that manipulative? Probably. Was it theatrical? Definitely. But I couldn't risk losing you again because I approached things the wrong way. Celeste studied him, this man who had planned and calculated and strategized, all in service of getting her back. It should have felt manipulative. It should have felt controlling. But it didn't. Because unlike Victor, Marcus had given her a choice. He had presented the truth and let her decide. He had risked everything, his reputation, his dignity, the possibility of public rejection. On the chance that she would choose him. That wasn't control. That was faith. I would have listened, she said finally. If you had come to me earlier, shown me the evidence, told me the truth, I would have listened. Would you have believed me? She wanted to say yes. But the honest answer was more complicated. I don't know, she admitted. I was so deep in the lie by then. So committed to the idea that I had made the right choice. It might have taken me longer to accept the truth. She paused. But I would have gotten there eventually. Then I owe you an apology. For waiting too long. For making this more dramatic than it needed to be. No. Celeste reached out and took his hand. You don't owe me an apology. You saved my life. Maybe not literally, but in every way that matters. I was disappearing, Marcus. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, just to fit into a box Victor designed for me. You reminded me that I used to be more than that. You were always more than that. You just forgot for a while. Because I lost you. Because I lost the person who saw me clearly. She squeezed his hand. Don't apologize for bringing me back to myself. Don't ever apologize for that. The weekend brought an unexpected development. Celeste was walking through Marcus's gardens, trying to clear her head, when her phone rang. She had finally retrieved a new phone 2 days earlier, and the number on the screen was unfamiliar. She answered cautiously. Hello. Celeste. The voice was female, hesitant. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I don't know if you know who I am. The name was familiar. Celeste searched her memory. You filed a police report against Victor 7 years ago. Yes. The charges were dropped after his family made things difficult for me. Sarah's voice was strained. I've been watching the news. I saw what Patricia said. What the other women said. I'm sorry for what you went through. That's not why I'm calling. Sarah paused. I'm calling because I want to add my statement to the investigation. I want to go on record. Sarah, that's incredibly brave of you. But you don't have to do this for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because for 7 years, I've been terrified that Victor would hurt someone else. That I could have stopped him if I'd been stronger, if I'd fought harder. Her voice broke. You got away. You stood at that altar and walked away from him in front of everyone. Do you know what that meant to me? To see him humiliated like that? Celeste felt tears pricking her eyes. I didn't do it to humiliate him. I know. You did it to save yourself. And that's exactly why it mattered. Sarah took a breath. I want to talk to your lawyers. I want to make sure Victor never does this to anyone else. I'll have them contact you today. Thank you, Celeste. And thank you for surviving. Thank you for getting out. The call ended. Celeste stood in the garden, surrounded by flowers she couldn't name, feeling the weight of Sarah's words settle over her. She had been so focused on her own trauma, her own recovery, that she hadn't fully considered the larger picture. Victor wasn't just her failed fiancé, he was a serial predator who had been hurting women for years. By exposing him, by refusing to stay silent, she had opened a door for others to speak their truth. She hadn't just saved herself. She had potentially saved countless women who might have become Victor's future victims. The realization was overwhelming. But beneath the weight, there was something else. Purpose. For the first time since the wedding, Celeste knew exactly what she wanted to do next. That evening, she found Marcus in his study, as usual. I want to start a foundation, she said without preamble. Marcus looked up from his work, eyebrows raised. What kind of foundation? One that helps women escape abusive relationships. Legal aid, counseling, safe housing, job training, everything they need to rebuild their lives. She sat down across from him. I want to use what happened to me to help others. That's a significant undertaking. Running a nonprofit requires time, resources, expertise. I know. And I have none of those things right now. But I have a nursing degree, which means I understand the medical aspects of domestic violence. I have first-hand experience with how abusers manipulate their victims. And I have, she hesitated. I have access to significant resources. If you're willing to help. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually guarded expression. I was wondering when you'd find your cause. What do you mean? When I fell in love with you 7 years ago, one of the things that drew me to you was your passion. You wanted to help people. You talked about starting programs for underserved communities, about making nursing care accessible to people who couldn't afford it. He leaned forward. That passion was part of what made you extraordinary. And I've been waiting to see it return. I lost it somewhere along the way. You suppressed it. Victor wanted you to be decorative, not purposeful. Your mother wanted you to be respectable, not remarkable. He reached across the desk and took her hand. But you're neither of those things, Celeste. You're meant to do something meaningful with your life. And I would be honored to help you do it. You'd fund a foundation. I'll fund whatever you need. Legal team, office space, initial operating costs, whatever. But more importantly, he met her eyes directly. I'll support you. As a partner. In this and in everything else. That sounds like a significant commitment. It is. His grip on her hand tightened. I told you I'd spent 7 years building something undeniable. I did that so I could stand beside you as an equal. So I could be someone your mother couldn't dismiss and your world couldn't ignore. But I don't want to just stand beside you, Celeste. I want to build something with you. Something that matters. A foundation for abuse survivors. that. And everything else. A life. A partnership. A future. He took a breath. I'm not proposing marriage. I know it's too soon, and I know you've been through too much to think about that right now. But I am proposing commitment. Real commitment. The kind that lasts. Celeste felt tears threatening again. But these were different tears, tears of hope, of possibility, of a future she was finally allowing herself to imagine. I want that, she said quietly. I want to build something with you. But I'm scared. Of what? Of trusting this. Of believing it's real. She pulled her hand back and stood, walking to the window. Every time I've let myself hope for something good, it's been taken away from me. My relationship with you, stolen by my mother. My career, currently being destroyed by Victor's family. My sense of self, eroded over years of trying to be what everyone else wanted. I know. So how do I trust that this time will be different? How do I let myself believe in us when everything in my experience tells me that good things don't last? Marcus rose and crossed the room to stand beside her. He didn't touch her, just stood close, looking out at the same darkening sky. You don't have to trust it yet, he said. You don't have to believe in anything except this moment, right now. I'm not asking you to commit to forever. I'm asking you to commit to tomorrow. And then the day after that. And then the day after that. One day at a time. One day at a time. Until the days add up to something you can trust. He turned to face her. I waited 7 years for you, Celeste. I can wait as long as you need. I just want to be here while you figure out who you want to become. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the billionaire who had stormed her wedding, but the struggling architect who had sketched dreams he couldn't afford, the young man who had loved her when he had nothing to offer but his heart. The money was incidental. The power was circumstantial. What mattered was that he was still him. Still Marcus. Still the person who had seen her clearly when no one else could. Okay, she said softly. One day at a time. Is that a yes? It's a yes to tomorrow. And to the foundation. And to trying to build something together. She finally allowed herself to smile. Ask me about forever later. Deal. Now, I want you to do something for me. If this story has made you feel something, hope, anger, relief, whatever it is. Take a moment and hit that subscribe button for Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson. Leave a comment telling me what you're feeling. I read every single one, and your engagement is what keeps these stories coming. We're almost at the end now. Let's see how this all wraps up. 3 months later, the Ashford family empire crumbled. Victor was arrested on multiple counts of assault and battery, with 4 women testifying against him. His father's Senate campaign was permanently shelved. The family's business interests faced boycotts and divestment as their decades of covering up Victor's violence became public knowledge. Eleanor Monroe filed for divorce from James Monroe, citing irreconcilable differences. The real reason, according to Celeste's father, was that Eleanor couldn't forgive him for helping expose the truth about Victor. She moved to Europe, supposedly to recover from the scandal in private. Celeste didn't attend the court proceedings. She didn't need to see Victor convicted to know she had escaped. Instead, she focused on building. The Monroe Cole Foundation, she insisted on keeping her name first, and Marcus readily agreed, opened its doors 6 weeks after that conversation in his study. It was small at first, a single office in downtown Charleston, a staff of 3, a website that looked like it had been designed by amateurs. But it worked. Women called. Women emailed. Women showed up in person, desperate and afraid, looking for help that no one else would provide. Celeste connected them with lawyers, with counselors, with safe housing. She held their hands while they told their stories. She cried with them and raged with them and celebrated with them when they finally got free. It was the most exhausting, heartbreaking, fulfilling work she had ever done. One evening, 9 months after the wedding that wasn't, Celeste came home to find Marcus waiting for her in the garden. The sun was setting behind him, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. He was holding a small box, and his expression was nervous in a way she hadn't seen since those early days. "You look suspicious," she said, setting down her bag. "I'm about to do something that might be premature. More premature than stopping my wedding in front of 300 people. Possibly." He took a breath. "I know I said I'd wait as long as you needed. And I meant it. But I've been carrying this for 3 months now, and I can't carry it anymore." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not a diamond, but an emerald. The green was deep and rich, the stone surrounded by tiny diamonds that sparkled in the fading light. "An emerald? You once told me that diamonds were overrated. That you'd rather have something with color, something with personality." He smiled nervously. This seemed right. Celeste stared at the ring, her heart pounding. "Marcus. I'm not asking you to say yes right now. I'm not even asking you to wear it yet. I just want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here. I'll always be here." She looked at the ring. She looked at the man holding it. She thought about everything they had survived to reach this moment. The lies, the lost years, the violence that almost claimed her, the slow work of rebuilding herself into someone she could recognize. "Ask me properly," she said. His eyes widened. "What?" "Ask me properly. The way it's supposed to be done." Marcus's face transformed with hope so raw it almost hurt to look at. He lowered himself to one knee, right there in the garden, surrounded by flowers he had planted because he knew she loved them. "Celeste Monroe," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I have loved you since the moment I met you. I have carried you with me through 7 years of silence and distance and doubt. You are my reason, my purpose, my home. Will you marry me?" She should have hesitated. She should have asked for more time, more certainty, more evidence that this would work. But she had spent too much of her life hesitating. Too much time waiting for permission to be happy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus slid the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit, because of course he had somehow figured out her size, and then he was on his feet, pulling her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion of 7 lost years finally reclaimed. When they finally separated, both breathless, Celeste laughed. "You've been carrying that ring for 3 months. 3 months and 12 days. Not that I was counting. Why didn't you ask sooner?" "Because you weren't ready sooner. I could see it in your eyes. You were still healing, still finding yourself. I wasn't going to rush you." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Some things are worth waiting for. And now. Now you're ready. Now you know who you are and what you want." He smiled. "Now we can finally start our life together." The wedding was small. 20 guests. A tiny chapel on the coast, white walls and blue shutters, the sound of waves crashing in the distance. No society photographers. No elaborate arrangements. No family drama. Just Celeste and Marcus, standing before an officiant who kept things simple, exchanging vows they had written themselves. "I promise to choose you," Celeste said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Every day, in every moment, I promise to choose you. Not because I have to. Not because I should. But because you are the person I want to build my life with." "I promise to see you," Marcus replied. "The real you. Not the person anyone else wanted you to be. Not the person you thought you had to become. Just you, exactly as you are." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands, nothing flashy, and the officiant declared them married. The reception was held on the beach behind the chapel. Celeste's father was there, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him, free from the weight of his failed marriage. Several women from the foundation attended, their presence a reminder of the work that mattered most. And Marcus's team was there too. The lawyers and assistants who had become something like family during the chaos of the past year. As the sun set and the stars began to emerge, Celeste and Marcus danced together on the sand, the ocean singing beside them. 1 year ago, she said quietly, I was standing at an altar about to make the worst mistake of my life. And now? Now I'm standing with you. Making the best decision I've ever made. Even better than starting the foundation. A close second. She smiled up at him. The foundation saves lives. But you saved mine. We saved each other, he corrected. That's what partners do. 10 years later, the Monroe Cole Foundation had offices in 12 cities. Thousands of women had passed through their programs, rebuilding their lives with the support Celeste and her team provided. The model had been replicated nationwide, and Celeste had testified before Congress about the need for stronger protections against domestic violence. Victor Ashford was released from prison after serving 8 years. He moved to a small town in another state, his family fortune decimated by legal fees and settlements. The last Celeste heard, he was working as a night manager at a grocery store, his political ambitions permanently extinguished. Eleanor Monroe died of a stroke while living abroad. Celeste attended the funeral but shed no tears. Some wounds were too deep to heal, and forgiveness did not always mean reconciliation. James Monroe became a regular presence in his daughter's life, finally becoming the father he should have been all along. He volunteered at the foundation, helping with administrative work, quietly making amends for the years he had failed her. And Marcus and Celeste. They built the life they had both dreamed of during those 7 lost years. A home filled with love and purpose. Work that mattered. A partnership that weathered every storm because it was founded on truth instead of convenience. They had 2 children, a daughter named Hope and a son named James, after Celeste's father. Both children grew up knowing that love was something you chose, every day, in every action. On their 10th anniversary, Marcus and Celeste returned to the small coastal chapel where they had married. The same white walls. The same blue shutters. The same sound of waves in the distance. I have something for you, Marcus said, handing her an envelope. Celeste opened it. Inside was a letter. Handwritten, on the same paper he had used all those years ago. What is this? The 38th letter. The one I never wrote because I finally got to say the words in person. He smiled. I thought it was time to complete the collection. She unfolded the paper and read. My dearest Celeste. 10 years ago today, you married me on this beach. You wore a simple white dress, and the wind kept blowing your hair into your face, and you laughed every time you tried to push it back. It was the happiest moment of my life. Not because of the wedding. Not because of the vows. But because after 7 years of waiting, 7 years of hoping, 7 years of carrying you in my heart without knowing if I would ever see you again, you chose me. You chose us. And every day since then, you have continued to choose us. I know our story isn't perfect. I know there are scars we both still carry, wounds that may never fully heal. I know there are days when the past feels too heavy and the future feels too uncertain. But I also know this, there is no one else I would rather walk through uncertainty with. There is no one else I would rather build a life with. There is no one else who makes me feel as seen, as known, as loved as you do. You are my home, Celeste. You always have been. You always will be. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me choose you back. Forever yours. Marcus. Celeste finished reading with tears streaming down her face. She looked up at her husband, older now, silver threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes that came from years of laughter and love. 38 letters, she said. 38. One for every year we've known each other. I plan to keep writing them until I can't hold a pen anymore. She pulled him into her arms, holding him the way she had learned to hold people. Completely, without reservation, with all the love she had spent so many years afraid to offer. I love you, she whispered against his shoulder. I love you too. Always have. Always will. Behind them, the sun set over the ocean. And somewhere in the distance, the chapel bells began to ring, not for a wedding this time, but simply to mark the end of another day. Another day chosen. Another day together. Another day that made the 7 years of waiting worthwhile. Thank you for staying with Celeste and Marcus through their entire journey. If this story moved you, make sure you're subscribed to Billionaire Stories with Mr. Lawson and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And remember, sometimes the love that seems lost isn't gone, it's just waiting for you to be brave enough to claim it. Until next time.